Allow me to express my appreciation to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed, and for your leadership in putting together this very important opportunity for us to talk to not just our colleagues, but our citizens all across this country as we jointly focus on this issue of sexual assault and domestic violence. And I'm moved by my colleagues who are telling stories from so many different perspectives. And many of them are personal. I think that's really the way we really have to explain these kinds of circumstances, or through the personal stories in which it is driven home, because you can understand how it affects real people on an everyday basis. Now, I was a former prosecutor before I came here to Washington, D.C., and while this story is about 20 years old, it defines a particular problem in a particular point in time. I remember distinctly engaging with a young woman, and she had been the victim of a sexual assault. She met a young man at a party, returned to a dorm room, and believed that everything was going to be safe, and he sexually and violently violated her. This was a very prestigious school in New England. She reported it later that week to the school authorities. But they took a position, since she really hadn't reported it immediately and she didn't have any other kind of particular evidence. It was her word against his word, and they took no further action. This young woman was completely abandoned on this campus, but worse yet, her perpetrator used that opportunity from thereafter to jeer at her and to taunt her. And not only was she the one who was violated, but she was the one who finally was driven into a point where, so uncomfortable having to confront this guy each and every day, she is the one who had to leave her college, who had to go home and start to heal and start a life all over again in a whole new experience. I ran into her because some 2 years later, she came to my district in Pennsylvania. She came there as a witness because only weeks before she had arrived, there was another party on a college campus nearby me, and this same perpetrator happened to come to that college visiting a friend, where he met a woman, and he went back to that woman's dorm, and another woman was violently raped. Fortunately, this victim, for the first time, was able to testify against him. We used pattern evidence to give her her first chance to hold him accountable. And based on that rape that we were able to prosecute, I think he may still be in jail. But her life didn't get put together immediately by virtue of that. And in fact, she represents a story that's too infrequently understood. As has been demonstrated by some of my colleagues, 1 in 5 women on college campuses today will report being victims of an attempted or an actual sexual assault. And yet only about 5% of those are being reported to law enforcement. So we've got this huge disconnect. And while it's 20 years after the incident that I've experienced, and there's been a great deal more work that has been done on college campuses, many of which are taking prudent steps to deal with this issue, we have to do a lot more. I'm encouraged. Just recently, President Obama, and this demonstrates the bipartisan nature of this effort, has appointed a White House task force to protect students from sexual assault. I'm pleased to be able to be participating with some local folks in my community to help advise that committee. We are using the experiences that we have from experts at local colleges like Drexel and Penn and Villanova and Penn State, and campus experts who have worked in this area on the campuses, but we're seeing some issues that need to be addressed. We're looking at issues like reporting procedures that require victims of sexual assault, once they report their story, to sometimes have to retell it 2 and 3 different times in order for them to fulfill the requirements of reporting, either at colleges and with rape crisis centers and with law enforcement. We're violating these victims again and again with procedures like that. We're seeing women who are subjecting themselves to rape kits. And it's appropriate and it may be necessary for the collection of evidence, but we're finding a year later, and they haven't even taken the time to process the rape kit. How many years do we have to continue to deal with dramatic backlogs in just the identification of straightforward evidence that would help us put some of these perpetrators back in the jail where they belong. Examining convoluted patchwork of federal rules and regulations that were well-intentioned, but they oftentimes work at cross purposes. So we're trying to strengthen the way partnerships can be generated between victim services groups, between college representatives, among law enforcement. The biggest challenge we face in the victims is the confusion about the process. They don't know who to turn to or who to report to. That's what we must continue to work together as colleagues to help clarify the rules and regulations that we are creating to send the kinds of signals so there's certainty and the ability of these victims to reach out for help. I thank you, Mr. Reed, for your leadership on this, and I pledge my intention to continue to work with you and our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to assure that we are making not only good sound law, but we are following sure to make the procedures work for the benefit of those victims. Thank you for your attention.